Welcome to the world of Level Up Weekly, a bounteous, open podcast filled with amazing loot, legitimately challenging enemies, but not too difficult to defeat, and of course, the EXP. Join our fellow big headphone adventurers DylanTheDude and Sphyrnidae as they journey on a quest to find the EXP from gaming news and discussion. Hello everybody and welcome to Level Up Weekly, your weekly EXP for gaming news. Thank you so much for tuning in for the... we're back at it again. Dang, Dylan.
Back at it again with the podcast.
Back at it again with the podcast production. Wow. This is just kind of funny that I just did that because the conversation that we have today in Level Up Weekly, we're doing a lot of things new this coming season. I'm so thoroughly excited about the stuff we have coming on here. So to start with, one of the things that we're doing, which I'm sure you're noticing right now, is that we're actually doing a separate introduction to our actual podcast rank to it. And the reason that we're doing that is kind of to give you guys a taste of what you're about to get in the coming podcast here, to preview what exactly we're going to talk about. So sometimes we may go off the rail of our script like we kind of did today. We theoretically didn't even have a script for today, and we'll go about it and we'll talk about what exactly occurred and just give you guys a heads up of what exactly we're going to touch base into. We revisited Ronda Rousey in a Pikachu outfit as I'm looking at the Google images still up right now on my monitor. We talked about Sylvester Stallone's success story and how that associated with us having a drive to continue doing Level Up Weekly. And then to also follow up with things about meeting who I am and who Dylan is. If you really didn't know about who exactly we were beforehand, well, now you do. we pretty much kind of went through our backstories and biographies, technically. And then tagging along with that, just had a really good quality conversation once again. So it was cool to sit down, just like old time's sake, and just kind of, A, you guys get to know us, and then B, we just kind of get to sit down and really talk to you guys there.
Yeah, and we also talked about just a bunch of things that also don't pertain just necessarily to video games, but also just about the podcast in general. I mean, we talked about some of the methods of production. I smeared my script.
Gosh.
Some of the ways to write scripts, to do scripts, and to do the production aspects of the show, as well as different ways to warm up your voice, to prepare for stuff like this.
Yep.
And just in general, things that we think are interesting and we could discuss.
Few important things, though, to announce for Level Up Weekly coming up for this season. We're going to need you guys' help because, of course, with a lot of this production value, we're going to need to have a little bit of assistance on the financial side and just in general on the support side from you guys. So this year, I keep saying this year instead of season. It's just a bad habit that I need to change. So this season, we are actually moving in a massive spectrum of where we're actually being published at. And for those of you that are listening to us for the first time, here's the thing. Season 1, Season 2 was only on Twitch. Now we are on the following platforms. We go live on Wednesdays to twitch.tv/levelupweekly. Then it's uploaded to Twitch following right afterward. After that, it's also uploaded on the same night, at around 9 p.m. or so, over onto our YouTube channel, which right now is going to be a link in the description of wherever that you're watching it, as I don't have the custom URL for it quite yet. We have to have a couple more subscribers before I do that.
Yeah. Then,
along with that, we also will have a Podbean. If you have never heard it before, it's podbean.com/levelupweekly, if I remember right. If not, it's levelupweekly.podbean.com.
Link
in the description. Then also will be available on the other following platforms. SoundCloud in a partnership with
Geek Week Productions.
Yep. And then along with that will also be available on MixLR, Shoutcast, and iTunes. So, if you didn't watch our podcast live, you have a lot of other platforms that you can watch it from. So if I ask you, did you watch our show? You should have probably seen it already. I'm not peer pressuring you. I'm just saying that we're going to be in a lot of spots this coming season, and that leads to a lot of excitement. But here's the thing. With a lot of those new platforms that we decided to do this year is going to be a lot of support. So we opened up a Patreon. What is Patreon? Well, Patreon is a monthly service that you can do that basically supports the people that of which you want to support. So for us to be Level Up Weekly, what's cool is that we also have a reward system based off of it. So say that you donated like a minimum of like $1 per month toward us, we would give you an appreciation by putting your name out on our introduction on Twitch, because we usually have a countdown timer that comes to it. So there'll be like a thank you to the following, and it'll scroll through the people that we work with or that have supported us. And then if you go up from that, it's like if it's $5, we'll kind of have like a quick little like ad break session that's like, hey, thank you to so and so for supporting us. And then following that forward, there'll be more fun details announced about. Basically, we'll put it like this: we have talked about doing a custom episode for people that donated a specific amount, like if they support us monthly with a specific amount. So we'll have a podcast that's basically us thanking you individually, and then it may be even like special specific topics that maybe you wanted us to talk about, or maybe it'll just be a fun podcast that we're just like, hey, this is for Jenny. Shout out to Jenny. You're super cool, Jenny. Like, cool. You're probably the best person at your high school or college or whatever it would be. And that's how that's going to play. And then, of course, following that, there'll be some other really, really cool rewards and swag for it as well. So, but yeah, when it comes down to it, support is going to be a big thing for us here, guys.
Because we do this not only for us, but for you.
Yeah, exactly. We're here. We love having these conversations with you guys, but we want to keep the lights on. We want to keep this going. And in order to do that, sadly, like anything, there's got to be a little bit of funding that go underneath it here. But anyway, guys, we hope that you enjoy this podcast here, wherever that you are currently watching it right now, and that we hope that you enjoy our really fun conversations here. And welcome back to Level Up Weekly. But yeah, like some of the original voice warm-up exercises that I did when I first started shoutcasting was just the stupidest things, and it was things that I just picked up from like certain people. They weren't like big hardcore professionals or anything, but they were just like, hey, I built Puppy Monkey Baby Peanut Butter because the Super Bowl happened like 3 weeks after that point. And so they made that because they just found that a really fun thing to say. And then also it was kind of a mouthful that, got your vocal cords a little warmed up, and he would just sit there sometimes in TeamSpeak and just go, Puppy Monkey Baby Peanut Butter, Puppy Monkey Baby Peanut Butter, Puppy Monkey Baby Peanut Butter. It's
funny because in radio we had in radio and theater we had two different things that we do. My dad kind of does everything like off the cuff.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't really care. But whenever I do warm-ups for either theater or radio, there's all the tongue twisters and the things that you can say like that like it. But another thing that's great is when you actually try to do tonal control and scales.
Right.
So, just do, re, mi, re, do, do, re, mi, re, do, and then like just keep going up and down, up and down. That kind of gives you more of a presentation quality. Like, it doesn't do what saying something really fast or articulating, but it just generally gets your voice sounding nicer, if that just means anything, because it doesn't help you with any of the skills, but it just helps you I sound a lot better after doing this, because then my voice just sounds natural because it's warmed up.
Exactly. I think when in vocal warm-ups, what I found out, at least, I watched a TED Talk on this. This is kind of fun. This guy showed a couple different ones, and I like one personally that he did. And I do this every once in a while when I wake up in the morning, because there are times when I wake up and I walk upstairs and I just go, "Good morning. How are you?" And I'm like, how is my voice this bad? I didn't do anything yesterday except sit by a computer. But no, for some reason, you did something, and it just, who knows what it was? Just whatever. Your voice just sucks now. One of my favorites is you tried to go at the highest pitch that you could possibly do, and you do a slide pitch all the way down to the lowest note that you can do. So, for example, you'd be like, okay, now that I sound like a silly schoolgirl, it just opens up that dynamic range, like you were saying with do re mi. But in voice acting, I think just in general, you can really do what you really want to do with that. And because in terms of voice acting, as long as you're opening up your throat and you're able to just rock at it, then power to you. Like it's so fun to actually listen to podcasts with voice actors on it.
Oh yeah.
That just kind of talk about their routines. Like, I do this in the morning. I never drink this when I'm about to do a session, or I intentionally plan A, B, and C around it. It's kind of cool to see how they plan the whole situation.
One of the best ones I heard was Rob Paulson, who was the voice of Carl Weezer from Jimmy Neutron.
Yeah.
Yakko from Animaniacs, and so many other things.
Right.
And all throughout the podcast, he would explain how just little, like, he would use the same positioning of his throat. Like, this is how I talk when I present, but I could change it a little bit in different ways to make your voice sound significantly different to do these voices.
Right.
And sometimes it's just about, because most people don't like the way they sound.
Yeah. It's a statistically known fact. I think, don't quote me on this because I don't have the exact number, but the last time that I remember reading this, I think it's like, I want to say 60 to 75% of people don't like how they sound originally. But the counter argument to that is that people have been pointing this out in statistic that's actually incorrect, because some people don't play a high enough quality microphone. Like, for example, when I was a kid and I used to be really stupid and do these like quote unquote radio shows, and it was really funny. I don't know if I've ever actually told you this story before.
I don't think so.
When I was probably in 5th grade, I had an MP3 player that I would hook up to a speaker station, and the MP3 player could record audio as well. And so what I would do is I'd have a couple songs downloaded on there, and then I would have... No, I remember. I also had my video game open too, because I love some of the soundtracks from video game. NBA Street Volume 2, by the way. Shout out to anybody that actually knows that game. I was a sports game kid growing up, and... So I had that ready to go. I had some other things ready. And so I'd have that playing, and I'd be like a 30-minute radio show where I'd just be like, now playing this song. And I was like, all right, that was so-and-so playing this song here. Thank you so much for tuning into, I don't even remember what I called the show, but it was just such a funny little thing that I did. And I would just sit down there. I'd have a little ping pong table out, and I'd just be sitting there, and I'd listen back to it later on. And it's funny because the audio that it came from was like straight from a speaker on an MP3 player.
Oh boy!
And I can't find it now because I think it's either thrown away,
broken,
or something.
Dead or something. Yeah.
If I ever find it, I'll try to put it up on this podcast, but well, without copyright, of course, because everything on there was from like an actual legitimate artist. That wasn't like as if I could get that open source. And so it was. Whew.
How old were you when you did this?
I would probably say, so I was about 5th grade or so like 10, 11, 12, maybe 13. I'm not really sure what your age is typically in 5th grade.
It's funny because when you were doing that, that's around the time I actually got involved with the real radio.
So when I was just here with an MP3 player, seeming like I was a cool kid because I was in the radio station, he was actually in a radio station rocking it. So no problem. We're totally noticing the skill gap that we have in terms of production value with each of us here. But that is what it is.
Man, that is
you
great.
Learn about it.
Like the fact that I was doing that and you were doing that, and then also in terms of like on the flip side, where, when I was like about 11, 12, 13, 14, I thought I was doing my parents a big favor by being our quote-unquote tech guy, because they were so technologically illiterate. Like, they had trouble hooking up the dial-up at times just because they were like, why isn't it working? Did you put it in the dial-up?
Did you actually plug it in is the question of the day.
Yeah, I did. Did you hit dial-up? No, I missed that step. But then around the time I was doing that, a few years later, you would, I've seen some of your old podcasts, and like you would be recording, and you would have, a better setup than, me and my parents' dial-up and everything. So we both were at the same levels, but inverse on like different sides of what we do.
But that's the other thing too. I think this is so cool how sometimes the stuff like that bumps into it, where you go back to like a certain time frame of your life, and then you find someone else that apparently was going through a similar position, and you're like, what? We actually had the same situation. Like,
whoa, dude!
Like earlier, we went to this small little get together / party,
like a potluck.
We had a simple little potluck for a club that was part of the college that I am now graduated from. Thank goodness.
And I went to a few years ago.
Yep. So you're out from, you got your associates. I just got my associates. Now I'm off to private university to study network management and security. But that's something we'll talk about later. Because basically, what this podcast today is really getting back into the swing of things. We kind of went into
also us talking about voice acting and warm-ups for like 10 minutes.
Hey, it is what it is. You know what? Just gonna make a quick tweet to the audio. Sorry to hear the clipping there. I just sometimes what's nice is that this year we did a little bit more of an intelligent basis to it. You may notice we're in a different background if you're watching this on video. If you're also watching this on the multiple other platforms that we have, which is great. We'll have more on that.
Yeah.
Of course, that was covered into the introduction earlier.
Just making sure I've got
exactly.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. Sometimes in podcast production, you don't realize how much of it is super spontaneous. Like, I'll give an example. Co-optional podcast I watched recently, and it was like 3.5 hours of discussion, and I guarantee you, probably about an hour of it was legitimate. Like, here was a scripted note about this scenario here. Here's a little bit about our sponsorship. Here's something about the transition topics in games. Like, I give respect to how Total Biscuit actually runs that system. Some people will disagree because, everybody has their own thoughts, but I like that he opens the discussion to be almost anything. Like, here's the topic, and then it can be anything that revolves around it. Like, for example, the one that I watched recently was them talking about Heroes of the Storm.
Ooh,
and Jesse went on this major rant about how he absolutely hated the game because of certain reasons. And I actually credit a lot of his opinions because the guy was very intimately into Blizzard games.
Yeah.
And so he came from a legitimate background. He wasn't just ranting to be annoyed.
Yeah,
which, again, I really respect when people
game.
are actually able to do that nowadays. It is such a difficult thing to do. And so it was cool to see how he took that topic, and then Dodger, who never really played Heroes of the Storm, moved into this position where that when she didn't really have anything else to add to it, it moved on to the next topic. So it was like, here's Jesse, here's Dodger, their guest that came on talked about the same thing, and that was pretty much it. Then as soon as it seemed like things were dwindling on the conversation, they're like, okay, next topic. And that's what I hope to be able to do something down the road.
Well, coming from both a production standpoint, from since I produced I think it's a total of 11 radio shows now over my career.
Only 11, no problem.
Only 11. A few podcasts, and also I emceed a lot of events. There's two different forms you can do, two different ways you can do this. You can do either A, completely scripted, which I hate when you have to go word by word because it sounds so metallic. You might stay on script a little, you might stay on track a little bit better, but to me that just kills some of the personality of it.
Yeah.
And then you can do the good way, the actual preferred way, which is probably what we're going to do most often when we do here, is the bullet points, where you just have bullet point, and then anywhere in between, you go from point A to point B, and then anywhere in between, and that's where you get the truly great stuff.
There are times where you get in this conversation. I'm sorry to kind of cut you on that point, but I think I know where you're following with this. There's that point that when you independently run on the podcast and you start having your own individual conversations, like that thing we talked about a second ago about voice actors was a cool little 5 minutes of just us putting in our 2 cents about how we've warmed up our voices over the time. And for your experience, for your radio broadcasting, for me, whether it be Twitch streaming or shoutcasting or just in general
social interaction,
a decent social interaction. Yeah, I'm not sounding like a 10-year-old or something. And so I think that's really cool that you get those opportunities, because sometimes you get a gold mine conversation out of nowhere. And that's why sometimes it's cool to tune into every single podcast that you watch of certain segments, because then you start discovering these little things like, whoa, I remember in episode 2 when he started talking about this. Episode 4, he had this conversation, but it was like 10 seconds, but it was the most memorable 10 seconds you ever had of it.
Yeah.
And you can't script that unless somehow you are a genius writer, to which I would definitely say you haven't. I won't go that far yet. I won't start bashing movies. We're not a movie podcast. We're a tech podcast, gaming podcast.
But that also does remind me, because I guess one little thing about me is I watch pro wrestling.
Yeah.
And there's one funny moment where Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's cousin is wrestling now.
Yeah.
And he had to go out and cut a promo. And in the old days, you would just kind of go off the cuff, and you'd have your bullet point, but then you'd be like, all right, go from here to here to here. But he keeps looking down at his hand on live TV, and then when he moves, you actually see
Oh
the
my gosh.
fully scripted
Oh no.
promo on his hand.
Gosh.
And I mean, that would be like if I were to do something on radio and be like, yes, hi, I am Dylan the Dude. I am not reading from a script. No, pay attention to nothing, even though you can't see it because this is radio.
Oh man.
Now today with our and like,
Yeah.
what fun is that?
Right. Yeah. Sometimes, obviously, in Hollywood, a lot of things have to be legitimately scripted because you can't really run that much improv. Although people can also counter that as well, because some of the world's like greatest movie scenes you've ever seen. What movie was it that Leonardo DiCaprio actually shattered that glass that he was holding in his hand, and it was legitimate blood, and he like stroked that bloody hand ridden with glass over her female voice actress's face. I'm sorry, I'm just drawing a blank at the movie right now.
Yeah, same here.
But just the sheer dedication he had with that. It wasn't scripted. They didn't say cut at that point. He could have said to cut it off, but he ran with it, and then it was like one of the most memorable scenes of that entire film because of that situation.
That also reminds me of like another one. Have you seen Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark?
I'll have to say, unfortunately, no, but I think I know where you're walking with this because I know a lot about it.
Well, originally in the script, there's a time when he runs into an assassin who, swings a sword around and, gets ready to fight him, and he's supposed to fight him back. However, Harrison Ford, the actor that played Indiana Jones, was too tired at the time, and he told them, and they said, you know what, just try the best you can, or come up with something. And so, after he does this big, like the assassin does this big old... and Indiana Jones just pulls that gun.
That's where that's from. I've seen that scene. I know exactly
that
what
was
you're talking about.
improv.
As soon as you started talking about that, I was like, oh wait, I think I know where he's going.
That wasn't in the original script, and it is like
awesome.
And that's one of the best scenes of the whole movie. That and the running away from the boulder, like those are what you remember.
That is awesome. That is genuinely awesome. Like I didn't actually know that was from the Raiders of the Lost Ark. I actually might have to go watch that film now. I really kind of want to watch that again. Not again. I've never watched the film the first time.
It's the best of the Indiana Jones movies,
Yeah.
I'll say.
Well, that's good to know. Well, anyway, for those of you guys that are tuning into this podcast, thank you so much for tuning in. It is always great to be able to be in front here again for season 3. If you're wondering where season 1 and season 2 are, they're somewhere. We have done them live. And
maybe way back on Twitch, maybe?
They exist. You can, of course, twitch.tv. If you're watching this live for the first time, that's where, of course, you'll find this segment here. And thank you also for tuning in. But you'll find a couple. I think there's like 2 or 3 of them that I officially saved, but I'm an idiot and realized that Twitch does not keep them, and I didn't necessarily upload them. The thing going forward is that it'll be uploaded on Twitch, and it'll be uploaded on YouTube, and it'll be uploaded, upload on Twitch, broadcast on Twitch, uploaded on Twitch, and then uploaded to YouTube. I can't apparently plan my own things.
Those old podcasts were, the original podcast, the original series, and this is podcast the next generation.
And the thing is that I can say about like the first technically 2 seasons, we had some amazing stuff. We interviewed Lawler, which was a great thing to learn about his background and how he got into shoutcasting. We were close. We almost got our hands on having a developer for Psionic Studios come in. Second season, we were able to bring my colleague and fellow shoutcaster Silent Echo to come into the podcast. That was really
British
cool
guy.
to get. Yeah, we had diversity in the second season, and he was really great to talk to. And he went on to do a lot of really cool things. He was a freelance writer for a big esports organization over in the UK, if I remember correctly.
What's he doing now?
Still kind of doing a lot of freelance writing, to my knowledge. It's one of those, I kind of phased out of the scene, not necessarily, just kind of like took a hiatus.
To focus on your work and school.
Yeah,
and...
so to kind of give a background of who exactly I am, because this episode is basically getting us back into the mix of creating podcasts once again, or creating a podcast episodes, I should clarify. And then also to kind of learn a little bit about who we are as people, and to just kind of build a relationship with you guys and just say, hey, this is so-and-so. I like what he does. Fun fact, he did this. Fun fact, he did that. Or, it sometimes it can be pairing, like, some people are like, I associate with Jordan or Sphyrnidae, or I associate with Dylan or Dylan the Dude. And so sometimes it just comes with that fact. But sorry, I got a little sidetracked there. But when it comes down to it, my career right now is a head IT technician for the college that I actually graduated from recently.
Or a branch of it, at least.
Yeah, exactly. I'm one of their remote campus supports, so I'm not like on their main campus. Like a lot of colleges and universities, they'll have like a couple offhand or campuses that they'll build so they can have a couple classes closer to some people, so that they're not like in this major stretch of, I can't take classes at this place, and then they lose money on it or whatever. So I'm one of the remote campus supports, so I have that focuses a lot of my time. Classes, of course, taking a lot of stuff for those of you that are in network management. This is for Cisco CCNA material. Now I'm actually moving up to my CCNP material, which is professional certification, which can go into network engineering and network architecture. So that's going to be a lot of my focuses of studies. So that's really what I put a lot of focus into, because network administration is something that it requires more time than you'd like it to.
Yeah.
But in the long run, it's worth it. Sometimes it comes out with a great success. Sometimes it just comes out with a learning experience. And that's just a cool thing that I've had about that. So, and now that I'm out of classes and I'm able to start running this production of the podcast again, I'm so excited, by the way, guys, that we have this show back. Like, you have no idea. I barely see this guy, at all physically anymore. And then over the summer, now we're like, okay, we got 3 months.
Now we're physically back.
Let's rock out with some freaking podcast episodes, so you guys got this. So, but yeah, I think it's going to be a really good summer, and hopefully we can carry this on a little bit further. I think we planned for 16 episodes or something, give or take. Don't worry. We will make announcements as time goes along here. Some important things that come alongside with here. But yeah, this podcast episode today is really just to kind of get to know who you and I are. So I think really, while granted we've already been in 20 minutes of the discussion and we've pretty much gone on a few things to learn about each other, but I think let's just kind of start out here. Dylan, I think let's just start with you. Who are you? Where, you don't have to give the exact location, but what kind of town are you from? Some stuff that you've done, not only with radio production, but just in general, some things you did in life that you kind of liked.
Well, my name is Dylan the Dude, at your service. I, as Dylan the Dude, actually grew up in a very small town, and I'll give the name, I don't really mind. 3 Oaks, Michigan. So with a name like that, it's not really a metropolitan area or anything.
Yeah, everyone's Googling, where's 3 Oaks again?
It is on Wikipedia. It is very small, and I think the biggest thing on it is, hey, Prancer was filmed there. Although...
Yeah.
The worst great Christmas movie ever. Watch it for a bad movie night. You'll love it. But I grew up in this little small town. Kind of a middle-class, poor family.
Yeah.
Here's poor, here's middle class, here's high class. Probably about here.
Yeah.
But when I was young, about 10 years old actually, I started getting involved with the local community radio station. And it was basically a thing of, hey Dylan, we're working on a sports show. Okay, why are you telling me this? Because we need you to work tech. What? You're working tech. Okay! And, I started working tech, and
he wasn't abused when he was younger. At least I hope not. He's just using that as for emphasis. I know some people on the internet are kind of triggered by things. Okay. That's why I wanted to clarify.
I was voluntold.
Take a chill pill.
I was voluntold I was doing it, which I didn't have a problem with because, little kid, don't have much to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been with it for now a total of 11 years.
Okay.
I've worked on 11 radio broadcasts, a few different podcasts, this one being the most prominent, longest running, and overall the best because, we have great production quality, great host, and, everything.
He's just buttering me up just to use my equipment. All right, sorry to cut in on this quick section of the podcast here, guys, but we just wanted to go ahead and remind you that this also, with this season, is going to be a little side note that we're going to add in ad spots for us here. So, for example, if you had a business that you wanted to promote, whether it would be anything that was local to our area, if you know us personally, or just in general, if you wanted to sponsor our podcast by any means, feel free to go ahead and contact us, levelupweekly@gmail.com. Just go ahead and get a hold of us, guys, and just see if you're interested, and we'd be more than happy to throw in a little ad spot for it here, too. Of course, this could also be used for other small things, too, like, for example, if we had promotional events or we were attending specific conventions or anything particular. This is what this spot is going to be used for here. So this is also a new thing that we're adding in with Level Up Weekly as well, and I think this is going to be a little fun aspect to it, but we're sorry to cut you off from the amazing conversation that you're listening to right now, but we just wanted to let you know here that this is going to be an ad spot that we're going to add in along with this system here. There is not an ad this time. The only thing that we're advertising is my sexy face and his decently looking face and, well, whatever. Anyway, guys, we're sorry to interrupt here, but we're going to put you right back in the action here.
After this break.
This was the break.
It's over. Click. Very, very handsome. But anyway.
Whoa. Let's not create fan fictions in the first episode, Dylan. I'd rather not be looking through in the future and realizing that we started fan fictions in the first episode that we ever did this.
I mean, didn't we kind of with our first news story in the first season?
Oh my goodness, you're so right. I think can we take a second to talk about that?
Let's do it.
Okay, so obviously some of our old episodes are not necessarily there anymore, so sometimes we may touch back on something that was there. Gosh.
What was our prime lead story?
So to kind of give a little bit of background on how Level Up Weekly first started is that we had Level Up for the Kids, which is our quote-unquote charity team that, and I say quote-unquote because it's associated with Extra Life primarily, so it's basically a team through them.
Yeah, it's basically
it's an Extra Life team that we are starting to try to build as a cool brand for the future. And it was kind of funny that we wanted to develop a podcast because originally I had JCast. I was heavily involved with that. I ran 3 seasons of it. I think it's approximately about 26 episodes total. It was a great time. I really just generally enjoyed doing that podcast production. I wanted to get back into it, and so of course Dylan, being a radio personality and really just enjoying same level of content, that we do with video games. It was just there are times that he and I would sit down for 2 hours and just be like, did you remember this thing that happened in the video game news? And we're like, why are we not making a podcast out of this? And then that's pretty much what developed it here. We associated it with Level Up for the Kids, which was our whole thing that we had with charity, and then this then birthed a Level Up Weekly. There's your history for the day, kids. Anyway, our first episode, we were looking through topics to talk about to see what exactly we wanted to kick it off to. And of course, one of the biggest things that was getting talked about that entire week, we figured we probably should touch base on it, was Overwatch pornography. So when the game first came out, for those of you that don't know, basically, if you were to Google Overwatch pornography and compare that with any other video game in the market at the moment, it was like, pretty much what Dylan's doing. It's like, here's where Overwatch was, and then off the screen, you just don't even see the insane amount. It was just like as if everybody just opened up Source Filmmaker and was like, all right, guys, let's get to work. Oh, man. Reinhard May? Whew. Yeah, I made that joke way too many times. Goodness gracious. I have a tendency of doing really bad jokes, by the way, so I apologize if you are here for quality humor. Entertainment, likely. Humor, at least not for me.
As two guys that grew up in a relatively, because in my small town, I grew up in a more relatively traditional, conservative town. For our first lead, for the lead story on our first episode to be about pornography of that nature. Pornography of any nature.
Now, to clarify, we weren't necessarily going into pictures and saying, look at this. No. The main thing that we talked about is how, and just kind of delved into the situation, why did this game get so much pornography out of it? That was our main question we got out of it, was like, why on earth is everybody running into it? Is it because it just was in general they created fairly attractive characters and therefore just people just boom, it was a gaming community, so they're just like run at it.
I mean, TF2.
Or was it something else? Oh gosh, stop. Or was it something else that was associated with it? So that's where our conversation came out of it. That just to clarify, because at that point I was like listening back at our conversation, I'm like, this sounds like we just literally talked about porn the entire time.
It became
one of our subjects. The other things, that was just like the highlight of one of them.
It became a running gag after that. Because,
yeah, exactly. We always joke about that because like the first episode, like you open up the podcast by going, Overwatch pornography.
And somehow we kept on going back to that, like, as a joke throughout the entire first season. I think we mentioned it on almost every episode, like, at one point we were like...
I know for sure in the second and third episode, I remember we were like, on the bright side, this is a story that is better than the first one that we covered. And again, I'm not saying that it was a bad topic, because
it was a great story.
Because we like, it's news. It's playing into what exactly happened in the scenario. And just to see, like, how a community just... it just kind of told you who was in the community to start with, and then got refined, and of course Blizzard was like, please stop it, and somehow the internet is the internet, and it worked, sort of.
It does kind of timestamp our first episode, because it was around when Overwatch came out when we did our first episode.
Yeah.
So... as long as Overwatch has been out, that's about how long we've been out.
We've pretty much been running this for roughly about a year. Now, here's the thing. Now, you're probably wondering why you haven't really seen a lot of the first episodes, and why it seems like we're kind of doing like an introduction to ourselves episode. The main thing that we're having with this season is that this one is like more of a season that we're legitimately sitting down, developing a professional podcast. Okay, let me rephrase that. A better podcast, a more professionally built podcast.
I would dare say professional, because we have great equipment. You can see our whiteboard like slightly in the background.
Shush, you can't look at that whiteboard, by the way. We have a bunch of our written ideas on there, so if you just like zoom in on that area, I'm gonna be really mad at you.
If they zoom in right now, I think all they actually see
you would get a lot of pixelation actually because of lighting scenarios right now, but
at absolute most, I think they would see, hey, we're starting on this day. And
we're starting on May 10th, guys. Spoiler alert, it's right there. Wait, you're hearing this today, May 10th? What?
Man, I need to get a better news. I need to listen to my news source more.
Gosh, that's crazy. Oh man, I should have heard about this before. But this year, one of the things that I really wanted to do was make sure that we had a lot of different platforms for it, because last year it was YouTube and Twitch, but the problem is that most of it was on Twitch, and I'll take responsibility for that. I should have put a lot more effort into actually uploading it, but I ran that during school. I had a lot going on at the moment.
That was when you were probably most into Rocket League, actually, was around that time.
I was running shoutcasts on I think for sure every Friday at least. And so that was just a period of time that I was just like, guys, I have 24 hours in a day, and I'd like to have 8 of them to sleep, sort of thing. And it just kind of got to that point, but that was me. That was my fault. It is how it is what it is.
Wait, you get 8 hours of sleep?
You know what I mean.
Dork.
Gosh, I'd be lucky to get 8 hours of sleep nowadays.
Same.
But I think and then anyway, sorry, diverted there for a second. But the main thing that we're doing this season is we're live broadcasting on the Switch. For those of you who are watching right now, thank you so much for tuning in. Then will be uploaded then to Twitch to be sure that it is there. YouTube will then also have a location for it as well on its own individual channel. Right now, I unfortunately can't do youtube.com/levelup weekly. After a couple episodes, that'll be the change the URL. But right now, the link is in the description for any of the sources that you're going to watch this from. It is available on Podbean. That's actually going to be our main RSS feed that we're going to have here, and our kind of like main website, where you'll see some other forums and discussions. Hopefully, right now for sure, it is going to be just our podcast content on there. That is our audio content for it, by the way. So the 2 I just mentioned are video. So if you missed it and you're like, oh, maybe I wanted to see their faces if it was the first time they bumped into them, that's where you'd find it. Through Podbean, you have us there for your main audio source, and then SoundCloud actually, this isn't through us necessarily. We're actually partnered with a few other people.
Yep, Geek Week Productions, which has their own SoundCloud page, Pro, so they upload everything. And also, if you want to listen to us on even more, we also will have our very own on MixLR.
Yep.
And iTunes,
Yep.
if you didn't already mention it.
Right. So we're going to be in a lot of different platforms this year because I think it was just, for me, as I learned, podcasts are nice if you have different formats that you can go through. For me, personally, I kind of wish that I could do this, but I'm not too stressed out about it because I have alternate sources. I like to go through Podbean. There's a lot of cool gaming podcasts are on here. Shout out to you guys. Some of them are kind of fun to watch. Like there was one of them was about Overwatch, and these guys just always had a fun conversation with each other. Sometimes it wouldn't even be about the game. It was just that these guys were just quality, nice guys to listen to. And then through iTunes, I really want to make sure that we were out there. And for those of you that watch on iTunes and it's your main platform, thank you for obviously giving us the support that you do. And I again, YouTube and Twitch kind of being our main source platforms for video. So I think just in general, having that expansion helps us a lot because then it can be turned around and we can, get a little more support out of it.
Well, this actually kind of reminds me, and I'd like to kind of bring this up. Have you ever heard of the choke point theory of production?
No, I actually haven't.
All right, well, my mentors in the radio business and production business in general have instilled in me the virtues of the choke point production cycle, which is what are your choke points and where can the production of your product go wrong? That's what the choke points are. And in production of podcast or anything, there's really three main ones. Are you producing enough content?
Yep.
If you're not producing enough content, there's nothing for your viewers or anyone to see, to view. So that's an obvious one.
Yep.
The one that another one is finances, which do you have enough production? Do you have the equipment? Do you have everything you need to continue doing? Which is why we're partnering with Geek Week Productions, so we can get access to instead of us having to do our own SoundCloud Pro page, as well as a Patreon that we will have set up as well.
Yeah, and that's something that we should touch up on real quickly here. So the other thing that's added with Level Up Weekly this season, which is, again, that's why there's a lot of really cool things that are happening this season. That's why I'm just like ultra excited about it. So the main thing is that we're running through Patreon now for supports. So, for example, we're running through sources like Podbean or, sometimes I'm not really sure too much with iTunes technicalities, but mainly with Podbean and other sources and just in general to keep us in these chairs talking to each other. I think it's going to be cool that we're going to have Patreon this year. And I kind of like the tier listings we have so far. We're going to have more announced on that this coming week, or actually follow our Twitter at Level Up Weekly, because that'll be a pinned tweet that's going to describe what exactly our supports are. Because what you can do is, like, say that you give $1 a month, you're credited on the introduction page for when the Twitch banner starts up. And then, of course, as time goes along and we have more people come in for support, we'll actually potentially break to do a quick little ad spot. And then in the ad spot, we'll also have a thank you to so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so to supporting us on Patreon. That's just $1 a month. If you do $5 a month, you then move up to the next tier. $10 a month moves to a different section, and if I think it's 10 or 20, I'm not sure. I think it's just 10. We actually build a dedicated episode,
a special
off
episode.
the air. Technically episode that we individually send to you, that's like an unlisted link on YouTube that only you can see, or just in general just a private podcast that maybe was a throwaway episode that we had, or was just something that we individually built to say something cool about you. If you immensely support us, we'll talk about you in the podcast.
We will do personal greetings. We will send you this big thing where we say oh, hi Jimmy, or whatever.
Exactly. So say Jimmy throws down $100 for us. If you don't know, that supports Podbean for 10 months for us. That's awesome, which means we could potentially run this further
even
if
longer,
we wanted to. And that's something that we wanted to try to focus on, is to make sure that we had enough that couple months down when this season's off and then we move on a couple weeks later or whatever we decide to do, we're going to be able to be financed. And so the other thing, too, is just in general, guys, when it comes to content creation, you got to support the people that you want to continue to see going for it. I know a lot of things are free nowadays, but they are not always free. It's if we want to play this in theoretical concept real quick, because some people don't really understand how this works when it comes to YouTube, Twitch, or just in general content creation. When you go out on more open source systems, or you go out and just kind of run your own thing, one of the main situations you have is the value of time. Some people don't even really realize this, but say that you did an hour of recording, like say we're going to do here. In that hour, I could do the following things. I could go and see if I want to do some shoutcasting for another Rocket League organization to see if I want to help them out. B, I could actually do work over at my other job right now and see if they wanted to just put in the hours so that I'd be working less throughout the week. C, I could actually be doing my own individual tech business and start doing that stuff. D, I could be doing stuff around my house, which is like clean my room or do some laundry or just in general, whatever. E, I could be playing video games. See how the 5 different opportunity costs, as we call that in finances, the 5 different opportunity costs that came in right there. So it depends on how you value that time. And see, for us sitting here, we say we want to entertain people. We want to help them out. Or if it comes to it, we want to entertain people, give them an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever amount of time that we sit down and talk to each other. We want to give them that opportunity to just go and say, I like these guys. Let me toss them a couple dollars so that they can keep running their stuff too. Because again, that hour could also be used for like working and other things too that keep that finances, that keeps the house you're underneath, that keeps the electronics that you use, or the general little things that you don't appreciate, like sometimes water or something. It's what keeps that going. So when people are super stressed out and think that this guy is disappearing, it might be because he's not getting enough support from his fan base.
Exactly. And in the case of our podcast here, I get a lot of intrinsic value to myself, for myself, just doing this, just talking and just, enjoying these deep conversations we have, these discussions we have. However, I could use that time this doesn't pay the bills.
Yeah.
But if I can get any bit of...
At least not yet.
Not yet. But if I can get any bit of gain that makes living my real life, my personal life, less difficult and makes this a lot easier to do, then I will be absolutely more inclined to do it and absolutely give more of my heart and soul. Because I always give my heart, soul, my blood, sweat, and tears to anything I do production-wise, to anything I put on. But like in the case of the NPR gig I do, once I started getting paid less and less, or my payments started coming in less frequently, I lost a little bit of interest, and I was kind of starting to do things in a way I didn't want to do, where I kind of, to say it in a politically correct way, half-arse it. Yeah.
Well, I think one thing, like to kind of touch on that logic too. I know this podcast is starting into these fun little conversations, especially in this first episode, but it's getting us back into really getting into the discussion and stuff, but we'll cover more on that later. But one thing that's interesting that I've learned about the situation when it comes to finances is that, people will always play the card. Everyone will say money is power or whatever. But one thing that people don't really realize is that technically, when you receive financial money or just in general support, like say 100 people were tuning into our podcast or something, or whatever that would be, say that they were tuning into the podcast, that's a satisfaction of success when that comes out. So rather, when you see finances coming in, when you see the amount of people that are coming in and supporting you, and when you see just the fruits of your labor, as it's called, you have this feeling of success, and it's an endorphin released in your mind that makes you feel like this is awesome. I want to keep this going. But when it doesn't release as much, so like the next week for some reason we get like 20 viewers or something, then this goes into the situation. You're like, oh, I put in all this work, but it only came out with this situation. So your mind kind of tricks you, quote unquote, to really think that it wasn't as great. And if it consistently occurs like that, you don't seem as motivated to do it because what originally was a success was no longer a thing.
It's become more of a chore rather than something that you, like a chore that you do poorly rather than something that you were so passionate about and doing. And that's kind of where becomes a
Right.
little moot there.
It is unfortunate, like, that when stuff with that happens. For a lot of people that move out to Los Angeles to pursue their acting careers, I almost feel genuinely bad for the people that don't make it out, because
Yeah.
they end up making the gig that just doesn't land anything for them. The costs are way too high. You don't end up hitting that stretch mark. And when some people always tell you the inspirational thing, never give up, that's the reason that they tell you that, is because you're gonna hit that point where you just don't get that feeling anymore. But if you gave up and you didn't give your 100% to it, that's the reason that you still continue to fail. And so there's some great examples for this. Sylvester Stallone, do you know his backstory?
Vaguely, yes.
So, and I want to make sure, I want to fact check this real quickly here, so we have our computer available here. But sorry, I have a mechanical keyboard now, so
Mind if I tell a personal story while
go
you're
right on ahead.
Well, another good example. This is me. While pursuing my career, my passion in radio, in producing these shows and creating content, I did end up becoming homeless for about almost 3 days, and it felt really bad because I'm not making the money I want to doing this, and it's hard for me to support myself. But through hard work, dedication, and pursuing my dream, I eventually got that higher paying gig editing for the NPR affiliate station here, and got to a pretty good place, and where I'm kind of happy I am, and would kind of like to continue up the ladder from there.
Yeah.
But someone like me going from being momentarily homeless to kind of successful and getting bigger it's one of the best things. And I love to see that happen in other people as well.
Oh, exactly. I love reading about success stories with this situation, for someone to just overcome terrible scenarios here. But anyway, to talk about Sylvester Stallone's story was pretty crazy. So he moved out to LA thinking, I could probably make it. Didn't know anything about acting whatsoever. I watched this recently. He didn't know anything about acting whatsoever, and he basically got to the point that he had a couple dollars in his pocket, and I believe there was a point that he was also living in his car, if I remember right, and it was just a horrible mess. He was basically sitting down with like $5 in his pocket or something, and when it came down to it, and actually, I can go ahead and transition over here. I've actually got a link out here. Back in the day, Stallone was a struggling actor in every definition. At some point, he got so broke that he stole his wife's jewelry and sold it. That's crazy, by the way. Like, I still can't believe that was a thing that came to him. Things got so bad that he even ended up homeless. He slept on the New York bus station for 3 days. His lowest point came when he tried to sell his dog at the liquor store to any stranger. Oh my goodness, like you steal your wife's jewelry, and then you end up trying to sell your dog to strangers. And oh man, he was able to sell for $25, and it was just the worst thing ever. So 2 weeks later, he saw a boxing match between Muhammad Ali and Chuck Wepner, and match gave him the inspiration to write the script for the famous movie Rocky. Sure enough, weird. It's like as if Rocky is something that everybody knows now. And so it just came down to it, and boom, rags to riches right there. $125,000, you see right here in the article. It's for that script, and now he's making bank. He's had major roles in a ton of action movies.
As you can also see here, he also valued his own creativity, because if you read this article, he had a request that he would not sell the script unless he could be the main star of the movie. And that's kind of like something we would do, is that if we were to start making money off of this, we would definitely, throw some benefits towards you, and we would also do everything like that, but we wouldn't change just because of money.
Right.
We still love the creative freedom we have here. We still love the great, fantastic content that we provide, and that gives us these thoughtful discussions that we've had already, and like we will have in the future episodes.
Right.
So we want this to be worth it to us financially, but also we really want this to be worth it to us just intrinsically, so that we can get these great things that we love, like these great feelings of accomplishment that we love.
Now, to add on to his story, because I really didn't finish it technically. I'm sorry, I actually didn't really remember this part. So got an offer for $250,000, but they didn't want him to star in it because, I mean, for those of you that have seen a Sylvester Stallone film, he's not necessarily one of the most intellectual people to talk to, technically. So that coinciding with just his looks, they're like, no, he wouldn't fit this category, even though basically Rocky was his story. They wouldn't star him. And so the studio just kept refusing it. Like, he refused it up to like $350,000. And then finally he's like, they just go, oh, fine. And they offered him $35,000 for the script and that he could star in the film. And that's how Rocky was made. 35 grand. Sure enough, what did he do after it? He bought the dog that he sold. Like, that's crazy.
That is so heartwarming.
That's so freaking crazy. Like, oh man. I hope one day that I do not reach that circumstance in my life because category 1A. One, it would suck. Two, just I could not imagine selling my dog for money. Oh man. If I was ever that point of desperation in my life, I hope that I was able to get out of it before that point.
And there are plenty of things that, you know, if you stick to your morals, you stick to your guns, you stick to your creativity, you stick to what you do best and what you love to do, you will ultimately, whether it's on a major level like Sylvester Stallone or even just a smaller level like my buddy Brian, who now works at a local theater working audio and tech.
Right.
You'll feel the happiness inside and also be able to kind of justify it with living.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what everyone should aim for, is the happy medium where you can meet both of those.
Right. Yeah, I think we pretty much touched base on that pretty well. One thing, and I know this is a little out of like context of where we're talking right now, but I just realized that like we talked a lot about your story. I really didn't bring up much about where I was coming from, I guess.
Oh.
I mentioned a few things, like I'm an IT technician, I'm studying to go for my CCNP, stuff like that. That's like the present tense. Growing up, I was in a fairly decent family. I had two brothers and a sister, small town, similar situation, except mine was more of like a village.
Large.
No, smaller, actually.
Really? Oh, wow.
If I remember right, I believe my population is a little bit smaller than yours. It depends on what you define it as, because technically there's a village of my area, and then there's an actual like city.
Yeah.
Town actually is what they call it by technical terms. And so I grew up in a smaller town, kind of a, you know, I don't mean to make this seem like it's a stereotype, but I was just a city boy born and raised in Stevensville. I can't go to South Detroit. And I did not take the midnight train going anywhere.
Good, that's not safe.
Oh man, that was a terrible reference. But anyway, so just overall a fairly supportive family. I was a 3-sported athlete back in high school, varsity level athlete for each one. 2 of them pretty much my entire time playing in high school. One of them was junior and senior year. And so did that. A student council representative, and of course I had my time for my video games too. For me growing up, it was a lot of games that I played with my brothers and sister, which were Super Nintendo games, so a lot of that is my big nostalgia. Other things like, and I said this before, I was a big sports guy, like growing up. You could probably say, you know, when I was in high school, I could probably consider myself more of a jockey than I was rather than an introverted nerd or just in general a nerd. So, but all in all, I think it's developed to this point now where I've seen like the best of both worlds, where I'm a really tech savvy person. I'm aware of a lot of intellectual things, but at the same time though, if I wanted to go play some hoops outside, I'd be more than happy to at the same time. So I like that medium. I've reached a really good point in my life where it's like you get the best of both worlds. All right, that's awesome. So that's kind of my background. Yeah, I don't think I really hit anything that was absolutely terrible. Few bumpy situations here and there, but everybody hits bumps. So that's pretty much led us to this point here. Dylan and I met each other through college. Just kind of a random acquaintance at first, and was like, "Hey, I'm so and so. I'm so and so. Cool. You sit by this like lunch table every day," and then we just would walk by or whatever, and that was just our central place of hangout, which was a lunch table by a cafeteria. And sure, nerds do that.
Well, and it's really weird because in this particular situation, it started out with just me and one other guy that were sitting there playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Of all things.
Yep.
And then I believe you were actually... No, we had two other guys that would come by and go, oh, hey, Dylan, how you doing? And stuff like
Right.
that. Jordan here was the fifth. But it turned from just two nerds playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And just, and this is where I'm going to say the big moral is be yourself.
Yep.
Because I was just being myself, and I went from having no friends in a college that's about 20 miles from my home. I didn't really know anyone. And I went from that to we had like a group of like 20, 25 people that would just constantly hang around us.
Now, I wasn't necessarily in as much of a position because, I was just kind of grown up to be extroverted, and I guess I could say one of the pros of just being the character that I was built over the years is that acclimating to new friends wasn't like a horrible thing for me. So for us to build that much of a friendship, I was like, that's awesome. We found people that we were friends with. Like there's some people that I hung out with and I thought they were pretty cool at the college, but then we started like actually getting legitimate friendships out of the situation. I love that point when you get to it. Like there's this little 2 or 3 people that you meet. And by the way, that's also statistically true. When you meet, like, say that you meet like 25 people, statistically, you will always have at least 2, 3, 4 of them be truly close friends
and lasting. Yeah,
exactly.
Those 25,
like out of the circumstance, like say that you guys just went on a hiatus for a year with each other, you would try to hang out with like select 2 or 3 to 4 people. Yeah,
and that was very evident because out of those 25 people, I think I talked to 3 or 4 of them on a regular basis now. A few years later, and of course, we wouldn't be doing this if you weren't one of them.
We would not be sitting here over in my little like office area making a podcast if it wasn't the case.
And so it's we both went to the same college. He actually invited me on. The first little taste of a podcast that we did together was actually for the aforementioned Level Up for the Kids, because he had me on for at the beginning of a 24-hour live stream.
Yep. So to kind of explain that story, just to clarify. So this was the second year that I ever did this. We would always have the Level Up for the Kids 24-hour charity live stream. Of course, it was just the Extra Life 24-hour charity live stream, but that is kind of like our more branded special that we go underneath it now. And so what would happen was I knew one of my main hosts for JCast, which was Yeti Hyrule, wasn't going to be able to make it. So I was like, I'm going to need someone to cover in. Dylan, I know that you've done radio before. Let's see if we can rock it. And sure enough, we did. Things worked well. And he ended up tagging with us for a bunch of video games along the road. We had a live action tournament that was hosted here. It was just, in general, great time. Everyone had a lot of fun. It was just very entertaining overall, and we were successful. We raised the most amount of money that we have. Even last year wasn't as much as this year, which was I think $2,300. Partnered with a few other of our teammates that were with that, and so it was great. We did an outstanding job on that. But anyway, just that was the story behind that. I thought that was really cool. Like that was the first time we ever technically sat down and collaborated on a project with each other on.
And if I remember correctly, because we remembered a story from our first one, the one story I remember from that one was the Ronda Rousey training in a Pikachu costume.
Oh, yeah, one of our topics
was... That's the one thing I remember finding on that.
Oh, man. One of our topics was talking about... Because I think the news was pretty slow that week. So one of our topics was talking about how Ronda Rousey had a video that went pretty viral that was her fighting in a Pikachu outfit, and I thought that was really funny. I'm going to try to find that for you guys to show up on here, but that was just really funny. I got to remember how she spells her name. That's definitely not how she spells her name. Man, I'm so glad that I don't bother with this.
And you have to remember, Ronda Rousey is a tough-looking woman. She looks like she has a complete mean streak.
Right.
And then...
Oh, boy.
And then what you're about to see.
Google Images for the win. As you can see here, there was a video that SportsCenter promoted that basically was her fighting in a Pikachu outfit.
There's a GIF.
It was there. That's what I'm looking for here. We'll just go ahead and open that into a different tab. So yeah, she pretty much just had a ball with it. I thought that was really funny, and it was associated video games. So I actually found out that she's like a super big Pokemon like loving person.
She moderated some forums on it.
Yeah, that's what
website.
it was.
Yeah,
that was great. Oh man, but yeah, that's what that was. I forgot about that. She was a moderator for that. Oh man. Ronda Rousey. Throwbacks. This is just a nostalgia podcast at this point.
Back when I was a kid, we had Ronda Rousey in a Pokemon costume.
Now these days, people fight in the WWE and MMA and Pikachu versus Bulbasaur. It's real life Pokemon at this point. Nope. You kids had it easy. We used to have our Game Boy Colors. Holy crap. That's a throwback. Well, I could actually say Game Boy, the original Game Boy. Like, holy cow. The memories of driving through like a car. Oh, going to my dad's away games. And I'd have my Game Boy with me. If I forgot my light to keep it on, I felt so bad. And so sometimes there were points that I'd have Pokemon battles that we'd be going through like over a street light, and I'd have to go like this and then hold it up so that I could still see it. And I'd be like, okay, I can do this attack with them. Okay, God, come on. Mm-hmm. I remember there was a Pokemon I was trying to catch, and I had to wait like four street lights in a span of like 10 miles to try to actually get this, because each time I was like, okay, this is what's going on right now, please.
How far gaming has come, ladies and gentlemen. Although I never had an original Game Boy. The way I played my original Game Boy games was I actually, for the Super Nintendo, I had the emulator add-on that you put into the cartridge, and you put your game cartridge into it.
Okay.
And it would emulate it for your TV.
Okay.
And that was how I played all of my Game Boy games, because we were cheap and I didn't have enough money to get a Game Boy. But
what was nice is that it was just, in technicality, they weren't actually mine. They were my brother's.
Same
and
here.
So I was just like, hey, can I play it? Yeah, sure. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Mario Paint? Yeah. Mario World? Sure. Yeah, I'm also a gigantic Mario guy from my past, too.
Big Zelda fans as well. We both are. Let's kind of go on this little quick little like your 5 favorite franchises or 5 favorite games, off the top of your head, mine, and then kind of explain, like, let that tell about us, because this is a gaming podcast,
right? They
will want to know.
Yeah, we were first motivational, we were first voice acting. Now let's get into the more actual legitimate section, which coming out of episodes for us in the future are going to be a lot about gaming episodes. One of the main things that we're focusing on this coming season is that there's going to be 1 week that we're going to have a debate format, and then there's going to be one that was an end of the month. So at the end of every month, we're going to have a discussion that's basically, what did people do right, what did people do wrong? Then debate, which is going to be different things. For example, the one coming up here, I won't mention it yet because I think you want to tune in this, because this is a really cool topic we found. But it does involve streaming platforms, and I think that kind of narrows it down pretty well. But anyway, I agree. Let's go ahead and take a look at like our 5 favorite franchises. You're more than welcome to go ahead and start. If not, I'll take it.
Let's do this in kind of a, so we're not rambling on ourselves too much. Let's go 1-1-1-1-1-1.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
So
1-1-1-1.
Okay, so wait, did you point to me or did I point to you? Screw it. I'm just gonna start to avoid this awkwardness.
1.
So, growing up, I know like I said, I was a Super Nintendo guy. So I think 3 of them for sure are gonna be in my top list here. I'm gonna put Super Punch-Out on my list to start out.
That's a very good one. And kind of in the same vein of you, although on a completely different genre.
Yeah.
When I was little, I remember watching my cousins play on their Nintendo 64, PS1, and stuff like that. One of the things I remember the most was watching them play some survival horror games. So the Resident Evil franchise as a whole, but Resident Evil 1 and 2 most specifically, I remember them playing. I'm going to say 2 for the sake of having one selection.
Right.
Because I remember being in there, watching them play, and then be like, no, don't go there. The zombie's gonna pop out and get no, and then get super scared. And it was just such a thrill that was never matched almost ever in my life.
When I first did YouTubing, there was kind of something like that. But anyway, okay, so I think my next one I'm going to choose is going to stay on the Super Nintendo side of things. A Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. The general storyline and the adventure was so fun back in that day. I just loved the overall concept of just, you had your own map that you could explore and find whatever you wanted to find. And the little hidden tricks and secrets and stuff. Like, there's half of those weapons that you could use in the final boss, well, just in general, over the course of your time playing the game, that you could get away with not using. But
still advances. Yeah.
If you had it, it would be so much nicer. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's why I love that so much.
Well, I'm going to actually have my second one be the exact same game.
Okay.
Because here's the funny thing. Do you remember, and we are probably too old or too young, I don't know where we fall, but do you remember walkthroughs that were actually written out?
Oh my gosh, I have a great story on this.
And they weren't on the internet.
Yeah.
Because you actually had
incorrect, actually. So my brother back in high school would pull the internet from the high school.
Oh, boy.
Technically, this was probably not allowed, but he would go in after hours.
The statute of limitations run out by now.
So yeah. Well, so basically what he would do is he would find walkthrough guides online. And I remember, and I don't have them anymore because they were too old.
Yeah.
But I remember he came home with a 45-page thing of just a walkthrough of Legend of Zelda and had everything printed out. Here's how you walk to this, how you walk to this, how you walk to this. Here's this section, subcategories. It's basically a guide that you could buy for it.
Well, that's not how we did it. How we did it, and this is going to sound so ghetto, but we went to his school, my cousin's school, and he actually went to this group of people and said, "Hey, I'm looking for a walkthrough for Link to the Past." And you would have these long, scribbles, huge scrawling papers that had any secrets anyone knew, any tricks anyone knew, and it was all compiled into a eventual folder or a notebook or something. And he would pay them with, either $5 or something, or here, I'll give you this Yu-Gi-Oh card or whatever. And thinking about it now, that is so unheard of.
Oh man, I have a challenge for anybody that is Photoshop savvy that is watching this podcast. Please make something for us that is just like Dylan's face photoshopped onto this kid walking into a gang of people that have their jackets out like this, and it's just photoshopped little pieces of paper that have that, and it just says, "Hey kid, you want some Legend of Zelda?
You want some Legend of Zelda walkthroughs?
A Link to the Past walkthrough guides?
Oh my!
Do you want? I got some secrets about the Legend of Zelda."
Hey,
oh man!
You want to know where to find the third bottle?
Oh gosh. Oh man, that would be amazing.
That is so retro.
Okay, so next one, I think I'm going to go to the Nintendo 64, Super Mario 64. Technically, growing up as a kid, I did not necessarily play this game. I did discover it when it came out, which was when I was, I think, 7 years old, I think. Roughly. No, it was actually before that. And my cousin from Florida owned it. We flew down to visit them for the first time that I've ever met them. Oh, well, at least that I remember. And I remember that he owned Super Smash Brothers and Mario 64. He basically owned Nintendo 64. Yeah. Our family actually didn't get us Nintendo 64, and I was like, oh, this sucks. But it is what it is. But I'll tell you what, the 2 weeks that we were there, and any time that I played Super Mario 64, I was never upset. Oh, man, that was amazing. That was a throwback right there. I loved every second. I felt horrible because there was a period that I had a really, really bad fever when I was down there. And so I had to stay home for a lot of stuff for a day or two. But it turned out okay because I was able to play the Nintendo 64. And it's can we get this? No, we can't. I was I understand. I don't think I said that when I was a kid, but I do now.
Yeah. Back then it would have been more well, why not? Or something like that.
Right. Where your opinion apparently is the most intelligent, as we all as kids know.
Yeah.
Okay, but yeah, that's my next one, is Mario 64.
I'm gonna stay on the Nintendo 64 because I had one and was so heartbroken when my mom gave it away to a friend. Mm-hmm. But one of the most played games I had on the Nintendo 64 was actually the original Tony Hawk's Pro Skater.
Oh man!
And I remember just the fun because I didn't realize this until when I started doing my own music show on the radio. But how deeply affected I was by the soundtrack and the punk soundtrack for Tony Hawk Pro Skater, because I just got this rush of nostalgia come over me where I just go around a skate park, just, doing kick flips, doing some sick grinds and some cool manuals or whatever, although I didn't get into the later games. But I just remember that overall nostalgia feel, that ambiance, that aesthetic.
Yeah.
And that has just stuck with me forever, and it just gave me some of the best moments of my childhood.
Right. Yeah, the PlayStation, I think it was on... I don't remember the actual game that came out for the PlayStation, but Tony Hawk game that you're talking about.
1 and 2 came out.
Too many hours got put into that game. I would just, and it wasn't even online play or anything. It was just play. Like, I don't care. I would have been just grinding whenever.
Back in the day when we had to play by ourselves or with our friends.
So I'm gonna go like a little more current now. One of the ones, and I think it's kind of obvious just because I've had a deep root with the game for a long time now, is Rocket League. And the reason I kind of put Rocket League in that list is not necessarily... Well, okay. It's associated with the fact that growing up, as I said before, I was a sports game kid. I was... kind of... It was more my brother, but then again, had the game, so I played him. Was a Madden, MLB The Show, NBA 2K, like NBA Live, games like that. But that was me. Like I love playing sports games, and going back to seeing this game that was recommended to me actually by my former co-host for JCast. He's like, "Yo, hey, check out this game. It's pretty fun to play. Maybe you could do a YouTube video or something with me." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, why not? We'll go ahead and give it a try." It was $20. No problem. This was during preseason when I had purchased it, and I found it really fun to play. It was just like a game of soccer that it came at you, and you're like, oh, what do I do? It was just kind of like a bench warmer scene. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, where the ball's coming straight at him, and he's pretending that it's a mailbox, and he goes... It was kind of like basically what I did each time the ball came at me. And it was just this general feel of just excitement, and I was having fun with it. And then someone was starting to talk about tournaments, because we met a couple other people on the actual system. And then I ended up finding out about the competitive scene, and then ended up starting competing in that competitive scene. And then there was a point that I was like, you know what? I actually would like to take and just like analyze the game, be there as a representative and a community ambassador, and that's what it became. And I love the position that I'm in right now. I think it's great. And that's where it came out of it. It was seeing a community develop for the first time, an online community coming together. I mean, we raised like $10,000. Well, at least the last event that I was a part of. I know they've raised a lot more after this point. Over $10,000 for Rocket League XL, which is partner with Extra Life, which that all went to the Children's Miracle Network hospitals. And seeing there's a professional production in Rocket League Championship Series now, which is now today, which got like 30 to 40,000 viewers, which is really cool. Today being Sunday, I should clarify. And then seeing, oh man, and then just like meeting a lot of the really cool people in the scene, and seeing some people that I've met IRL now, or some people I'm about to meet IRL, because I'm going to be attending some LANs over the summer as well. I think it's just, in general, I've absolutely loved it. I've just met some amazing people, and I've seen how an esport environment grows and what an esport is actually like. That's why I like that game.
And that kind of bleeds perfectly into my next one, is the game that I have to attribute to kind of increasing my social skills in both a meeting people online way, and also a being able to kind of handle some toxic communities, because the community for this was a little toxic at times, but also one of the best communities I've ever been a part of, which was, and I'm going to specifically name drop this game, but it's the entire franchise really, up till 4 or 5, because I didn't really play too much 4 or 5, but Halo 3.
Okay.
Because Halo 3 had such so much customization to it with Forge, custom game modes, and that's where I first had Xbox Live. That's where I first kind of had the experience of playing online with people. Since I lived out in the country, didn't really have many friends that could easily just walk over and play games with me.
Right.
So the ability to play Halo online with people, a competitive game online with people, and then go from that competitive aspect to just, want to play Duck Hunt? You know, a bunch of people run back and forth and stuff.
Right.
And it was just so much fun. Some of the best times I've ever had in my life, because that's where I first learned this is what having a lot of friends is like, to play video games with.
Right.
And it was just so much fun.
Yeah.
And had such a strong impact on me socially that in real life, whenever people would, verbally assault me, insult me or something,
Yeah.
I'd be able to be like, man, I've heard worse on Xbox Live.
It's like, hey, you suck at this game. I was like, okay.
It's like they say,
Hey, I hope you kill yourself. Whoa.
it's like, oh, hey,
Okay.
hey, kid, you suck. I'm like, is that really the best you got? Someone told me to go.
Welcome to the internet, by the way.
Someone told me to go do something to my mom on Halo. Your "you suck" comment has nothing on me.
Mm-hmm.
But that has to go to my number 4. So one more for us each.
Yeah. So went through Rocket League. I think I'm gonna. Gosh, this is tough because now I'm trying to refine it. That I think I'm gonna stay more on the present side of things. Like I could talk about past games all day. If we had to clarify it, it would help. But we're not gonna worry about that right now. I think I'll have to attribute the Walking Dead Telltale series. Actually, I don't necessarily think I could say that is purely the best game I've ever played in my life.
These are just on the top of our heads.
This to me was, especially when season 1 first came up, this to me was seeing what it's like to be immersed into a story of a game and feel what that character is feeling. Like, there was a point that I was playing campaigns and I would feel what is going on, but to be actively involved with what was going on, of course, now Telltale is getting a lot of flack for how they actually do this, and maybe talk about this in the future, but to see how you get so attached to specific characters or just in general to the storyline, I loved that feeling. Like, there were points that I was in a really high stance, there was points that I was in a really low stance about what exactly was going on. Like, of course, I'm sure all of you know by this point, the Walking Dead ending was like one of the most tear-jerking moments I think anybody has ever had in gaming history. There's, of course, some other ones, of course, too. Actually mentioned in the YouTube comments which ones do you think, or even mentioned to us in the chat, because there's some really sad moments. Anyway, it was a game that really put in a new genre. It was one that then inspired other game developers, like, say, people that created Life is Strange, the Walking Dead series. Telltale, just in general, flew off the rail with, and I mean that in success, they flew off the rail with just creating more games based on that. Like, for example, we were talking before this podcast, they now have Guardians of the Galaxy,
which is
as a Telltale game.
Yeah.
So, if you ever wanted to control Chris Pratt, guys, now you have the opportunity.
Well, and it's kind of funny because Telltale has definitely done a great job in reinvigorating the art of storytelling in the modern gaming era.
Yep.
Because it kind of took a backseat for a while to, where's my Call of Duty where I can run around and shoot? And
I like to think about it like this. So Half-Life 2, or just in general the Half-Life series, really developed a story that was like you learn about your own situation at your own pace and whatnot. Then it went to games kind of following that trend, kind of following a little bit of that trend. A couple things that came in that were pretty impressive. And then Telltale stepped up and created a point-and-click to say, but also a couple interactive things along with it to tell a truly good story. And that, to me, was really the component that stuck with me.
Well, that kind of leads me into my 5th game, and it's one that I remember very, very well. And it's one that actually is often credited as one of the better RPGs of all time. And it's going to be a branded license game. Like, it's not like, it's a Star Wars game.
Yeah.
Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic.
Okay.
And I remember this as a kid because I picked it up at a store for like $30.
Yeah.
And my mom was like, oh, hey, it's Star Wars. You'll like it. And as I played it, I never had that feeling before of actually caring in a video game. Like, I always just kind of was like, hey, I wrecked my skateboard on Tony Hawk. That's funny. I got eaten by a zombie. Man, that's cool. But then when I actually started to learn about these characters, about Carthonasi, about Mission Vio, Zanzibar, the Wookiee, or Zambar, the Wookiee, who was just so much fun to talk to. Heck, even the murderous psychopathic robot that would just you ask him to be nice and he'd be like, I do not want to do that, but I will try. And then it's just those little characters that endeared themselves to you. I never felt that in a video game beforehand.
Right.
And also with, some great combat, some great story-driven plots and decisions you can make. And also, this was the first game I ever played that had a morality system where you would, the game would change depending on if you were a good person, a bad person. There would be consequences to all your actions, and it was just something that, while Telltale kind of reinvigorated that today, or like Fallout and stuff like that have reinvigorated it today, Knights of the Old Republic is a cult classic that really did that back in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
So it's one that I remember very well, and it's one of my favorite games of all time.
Right. Yeah, I think that pretty much touches base pretty well on kind of... this podcast is really cool. We definitely covered a lot of really fun discussions. I think it was good to sit down. We're back in the reins once again for Level Up Weekly. It is great to be back. And, of course, thank you to everybody that is watching, whether it would be from Twitch, YouTube, to Podbean, iTunes, Mixlr, Shoutcast. Thank you. And SoundCloud, of course. Thank you, everybody that tagged along and on this fun adventure of learning about who we are. Of course, I am Sphyrnidae. Tagging alongside with me is DylanTheDude, and thank you so much for tuning in for this podcast here, guys. Of course, you will find all the links in the description for either any of our topics coming in forward for the future, or just in general of our Patreon, which we really hope that you guys are able to support us here along the route, and other things along with it too will be in there.
And one final thing to kind of reiterate. Remember that thing that I was talking about earlier about the choke point theory?
Yeah.
Well, we didn't get to the third choke point. And it's funny because that third choke point, what you need to have a successful podcast or any sort of show, is distribution.
Yeah.
So why don't we do it again? Where can you find us?
Exactly. You can find, of course, if you're looking for a lot of our interactive news updates for giveaways that we may do in the future or anything like that, just in general news about what our lives hold, twitter.com/levelupweekly. You can follow our social media there. You can also, and of course, watch the podcast live from Twitch on Wednesday nights, starting at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which would then be twitch.tv/levelupweekly. And of course, you can find our YouTube channel. The link will be in the description, as we don't have Level Up Weekly, the at least custom URL yet. And we're working on that still. So you'll find that there as the archive in case that you missed a live broadcast. And then following that, you can also see it on Podbean, SoundCloud, Mixlr, iTunes, SoundCloud. If I didn't say it, I think I did say it twice. But you can find it in a lot of different formats. Like last year, we were in like 1 or 2 locations. This year, we said, you know what? We're just going to slap everything into it. We're going to make sure that you guys are going to be able to watch this wherever you are, however you want, and that you're going to really enjoy it. So thank you guys so much for tuning in today, and this is Level Up Weekly's crew signing off.
See you next week.